as Jane said, I have been involved in the development of some of these materials more intensely for the last couple of months. And you may or may not be aware that we have now, or you should be, I don't think you've all got candidates who have gone through, but we've now launched the pilot of the beginner coaches course just recently. So that includes the online component. You'll see on the left-hand side there also that our levels, or our accreditation levels, are now aligning to qualifications. And this is something fairly new for us in the sport of gymnastics, but it's really exciting from my perspective because it means then that people are not just getting a Gymnastics Australia accreditation, but they're also getting something that's worth something outside of gymnastics. And for a lot of people through the beginners courses so far that I've spoken to, they're very excited about that. You mean I get a certificate? Especially for some of the youngies, you know, they can get a certificate too in sports coaching, you know, when they're 16, 17. So it does mean that it gives them that extra level of qualification and something else they can put on their resume. And as I said before, it helps with developing this as a career pathway as well, that these qualifications are linked to that. Now, just to confirm, if you're querying the actual qualifications themselves, do I have to do them? Do I not have to do them? Any new courses, any new coaches that come into this structure will automatically get those qualifications. Okay, so it's not that you choose to opt in or opt out. You will. The content of courses and the structures that we've adopted there are in line with those qualifications, so you will automatically get that. You don't have to do stuff that's above and beyond what's required for those levels. Okay. Okay, good. Any other burning questions about the framework, the structure so far? Yeah.
When do existing coaches find out where they fit? Because that was put out to be roughly around April-ish.
Yes. Yep.
And hasn't happened. So
sure.
Just curious.
Yep. It will be before July 1, so we're looking at June. We're in the final stages of confirming that now. So just to let you know, the process has been that all existing coaches in a state, their records, their IMAS records, all their updating, all their qualifications, all that sort of stuff, has been sent to the state associations. State associations have engaged their sport management committees, their state sport management committees, to make a recommendation on which level they think each individual should go across to. And they have made that recommendation, you know, based on the evidence that they've got, but also, I guess, their knowledge of that person if they are aware of them. As a default, our level 1 coaches are being transitioned across the intermediate level, and our level 2 coaches to advanced level. Okay, so that's as a default. There are situations where those people have gone up to higher levels, particularly in a case where we have gym sports that don't have a level 2 qualification currently, and we know that they're coaching at a much higher level, so they should be recognised in the new framework at a high level as well. So the state sport management committees have had a chance to have a look over those, and we now have finally almost got them all that from the states, and then they are sent, particularly for the higher levels, they're sent to the national commissions for verification of those at a national level, and also to make sure that there's consistency across the states, that one state isn't kind of pegging their coaches across to a higher or lower level than others, so they're sort of moderating it across the states as well. That is happening now, and I think that's due back by the end of May, so we're looking at letters going out in June for that. So yeah.
There is a process after that if once the coach is notified of the level that they're sitting at, if they think, oh well, hang on a second, I actually think I should be at a higher level, then there's a process which is similar to an RCC or an RPL process that they can go through. That, you know, where they can, if for example they hold a degree in, you know, a university degree that wasn't, you know, people didn't know about, then like I say, there's a process that they can go through. That way that can be looked at and
so is that where they can appeal if they feel that
exactly. Yeah.
And now that I think they initially said you had until December to do that.
Yeah.
Now that this information is coming out later, is that date still going to be December or?
It will still be December. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yep. So the idea is, for most of us who have our tech membership renew in a calendar year, the idea is that by the renewal for next year, for 2014, that everybody will renew at their new level. So we've got to sort it out by the end of the year, ready to do that batch renewal.
And so with this process, will people sort of have like two qualifications, like the certificate and the coaching qualifications?
Okay. Yeah, so for coaches that are transitioning across, they won't get the qualification on the left-hand side there,
But
okay?
if they go up to a higher level,
Correct.
up to a higher level that goes down the scale,
Yep.
then they get the respective certificate in that.
That's right, yeah. So you have to do the new content to be able to get the qualification. Yeah.
And then what if people have already got, for instance, a physical education degree, which is possibly beyond some of those certificates?
Yep, absolutely. Well, then aspects of that will map across to these, sometimes partially, sometimes fully, perhaps, and we recognise that in that RPL process. Yeah.
The other thing as well is if, for example, you hold two coaching accreditations, one in one sport and one in the other, you may well, once you're transitioned across, you could end up holding a WAG intermediate coach accreditation and a MAG advanced, depending on what your experience, knowledge and all the other bits and pieces are. So that, like I say, you can end up holding two different ones, so it wouldn't be just a straight level one.
You can have more than two though, I'm presuming?
Oh yeah. Whatever you hold now. So if you held a level 1 in 4, then you would automatically
At least go across the intermediate
in all 4.
And then if you've got
Yeah,
different levels,
exactly.
you'll
Yeah.
get at different levels.
In that.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, just to confirm, as far as the qualifications on the left-hand side go, that you'll only gain those when you do the new content, the new courses. Okay, you don't get given that when we're transitioning across.
So if people transition, say, into advanced and then they wanted to get that corresponding certificate, could they do components of even though they're qualified at advanced, do components of that to then qualify for that certificate?
Yes, absolutely. So if they're transition across to this accreditation level, so we're calling these accreditation levels, these are qualifications. So if they transition to this accreditation level, they can undertake the extra work that's necessary to achieve that certificate 3 at that level. Yeah, absolutely. Because what's required at a certificate 3 is actually a lot broader than what we used to teach, say, at a level 2 kind of level, and it's according to what the government sets as, as a certificate 3 in sports coaching, what those key electives and core units are. So.
And who's going to run those certificate courses?
Yep. So we're in a auspicing relationship with a registered training organisation who will then accredit us or deliver those qualifications, or we deliver them. They auspice them, so they
sign them off.
Certify them. Yep.
You're saying if someone's level 1 now, they come across their intermediate level.
Correct.
In order to achieve certificate 2, they need to do X amount of work.
Yeah.
Who determines the X amount of work, and will that be different per coach, or is that a standard no matter what you've done?
Yeah. It'll be standard. So it's looking at, we've done a mapping process between our existing level 1 courses and a certificate 2. So we can show where the existing content kind of maps across, and there are gaps where in our current courses we haven't covered that stuff. So those gaps can either go through, training to undertake and to do those gaps, or they can go through a registered, recognition of prior learning process where they say, well, you know what, I've done actually all of that stuff, but they need to show it to the RTO, to the organisation who gives these qualifications, and then they can.
So as well as running a beginner course, intermediate course, there'll be opportunities where GA or GB run certificate 2 courses for holders of intermediate.
Probably not. I mean, the RTO will have opportunities that they will be running a certificate 2 in sports coaching. So there's an opportunity for people to come in and out of that through the RTO. But whether it's being run through Gymnastics Victoria, I don't believe so. But there are opportunities. There's lots of organisations who run a certificate, 2 or 3 in sports coaching.
But if we're going to be using the GA preferred RTO, how does a coach go ahead and do that certificate 2 is probably my main question.
So it's a matter of enrolling with the RTO or discussing with them, really have a discussion and say, look, I've done this and this and this, do you think it's worth me doing the course again, or do I RPL, or do I RPL some and just do other units in the course? So that's really a discussion that you would have with the RTO. and they will tell you what their requirements are as far as how much your experience meets the requirements.
And I mean, for example, if we have a reasonable group of people who want to do it, then it's the potential is there for GV to organise it on a day that suits us and you guys. So that's not out of the question. It's just a matter of taking it one step at a time and finding out if there is a whole group of people who want to do that. So
And getting back to the costing question, there's still to be determined how much that would cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it depends on how many units you need to do.
Yeah.
How much your RPL.
Yeah.
And which RTO you do it through. If you do it through ours, we might be able to organise a discount. If you do it through another RTO, they will have different costing structures as well.
So it's not gymnastics specific, is it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it is. If you do our new courses, it is gymnastics specific. You get a certificate 2, 3 or 4 in sports coaching, but the content that you will learn is gymnastics specific to allow you to be a gymnastics coach. But you can go and do a certificate 2, 3 or 4 or diploma in sports coaching anywhere. You will have to apply it to a sport, and in your case that would be gymnastics, but you can do it through any provider. Yeah.
So if you came in as an intermediate bronze, for instance, and you've done all that work prior, do you then have to go and do a Cert 3? Is that right?
No.
You don't have
if
to.
You go and do the advanced, you get the Cert 3.
Yeah, it's your choice. When you transition in, then anybody who's transitioning in, you don't automatically get those qualifications. It's then that coach's choice whether they want to go and seek out and do those, the Cert 3, the Cert 2, whatever it might be.
So if you went on to do the advanced, then you would have most of the units, just in that level, you would have most of the units for a Certificate 3, and pretty much you'd be able to RPL or apply for recognition of prior learning for the rest of the units, which were at this level.
That level.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do the certificate 2 before you do
No.
certificate 3.
No. You can jump in at any level you like. Now for us, for our accreditations, it is linear, so you do have to do the one before, but not as far as qualifications go.
So just clarifying, if you're an intermediate coach and you enroll into the intermediate bronze,
Yes.
you would then get your level certificate 2?
You,
No.
that's, it's the
You would be
certificate.
then enrolled into a certificate. Once you start this, you are enrolled in a certificate 3.
So the certificate, certificate 3 in sports coaching spans those 2 levels. So you'd have to do intermediate bronze and advanced. You come out of it, and that's when you get the qualification, because the sport coaching qualification is split across those 2 levels.
So you can't really get your certificate 3 unless you've completed the advanced. You can't stay at intermediate bronze and get certificate 3.
Because the requirements for that certificate 3 are actually spread across those 2 levels. Okay. All right. There may be more questions as we come through, so feel free to throw them out there.
Once registration,
Sorry.
once we become registered each year, you don't have to have the certificate.
No.
No. With Gymnastics Australia, we just require you to have this bit here.
Yeah.
Okay? This is like a nice bonus.
Yeah, added extras.
And that you will get that automatically once you do the new courses at each of the levels. Okay?
So is it going to be like the existing course where the accredited beginner coach, you do your online and your face-to-face? Is your immediate section intermediate again? You've got workbooks, you've got online face-to-face.
Yep.
Is that the program for certificate 3 as well, or whatever it might be?
Yes,
Is it
well, it's
online face-to-face and a workbook or something?
Yep, so all the content that's covered in that pre-course workbook, online, face-to-face, is meeting the requirements of a certificate 2 or 3, okay? So
And that will be the format more as online face-to-face and submission.
Yeah. Most of it's pre-course rather than post-course. So I'll show you a picture that that might help. So for beginner training, and most of us are aware of this so far, we have an online component, so a component of online training which participants register into, and we've had a lot of people that do that so far. The learning management system, or LMS, that we're using is also in pilot phase, so that will improve again once July comes. We're rolling out a new version of that which will have increased functionality, which is nice. But the learning management system is not just a way to give you the content or give candidates the content. It's also tracking people, registering people. It manages all the payment, all the administrative stuff that Gymnastics Victoria used to do. It's now doing that online, so it's automatic, which will make it much easier for them, but hopefully much easier for participants as well. So the online training is the first piece that we do as a beginner coach, and they can start this, by the way, when they're 14 years old. So it's younger than it has been in the past. Once they've completed that, they can then enrol into a face-to-face training course, and that will be running periodically through the whole year, and especially for the rest of this year. I know in Victoria we'll have quite a few, so it's a matter of booking into one of those. But they're a one-day course.
Is there an minimum age requirement for that one?
14.
The 14.
Yep.
So you're now saying you could be a registered coach because you pay your registration fees to both
Yep.
bodies at the age of say 14.
Correct.
Whereas now currently you could be level 1 under the old system, but
Yep.
because you're only 16, actually formally aren't registered.
Correct. Yep. So you can be registered as a beginner coach at 14. Yep. Remember, what you can do and can't do as a
Oh,
beginner
yeah,
coach
but
is very
it's
different to a level 1 coach.
Yeah.
Yep. And we'll go through that in a minute. But yep. We've had lots of 14-year-olds come through so far. I've been surprised, and as the presenter, I was a tad sceptical as to, because I was worried about the whole 14-year-old thing. So I was a bit sceptical as to how they would go, whether they would be mature enough to actually understand what we were delivering. However, I was pleasantly surprised that these kids were picking this stuff up really quickly. It's a much more reduced amount of information that we're getting across than the old level 1. So that was massive, and it was a massive brain load to try and understand all this stuff. So it's much more reduced. It's more practical. It's about actual coaching experience, not knowing, the spotting technique for a double back. So it's much more practical about their coaching skills. And they were doing really, really well on that side of it. So yeah, I'm a bit of a convert now. So after the face-to-face training, they essentially get their beginner coaching qualification or accreditation. Okay, they get their beginner on the day that they finish their face-to-face training.
So there is an assessment process that happens during that face-to-face course. So as presenters, they are watching the participants and marking, going, yes, they are competent at that particular assessment element. So the coaches then walk out at the end of the day going, yay, I'm a beginner coach. There's nothing for them to do afterwards.
Post-course, yeah. Okay, which is actually makes a whole heap of sense. We can see on the day, and I wasn't sure how this was going to go either, but we can see on the day whether we would say, yep, they could do this, or no, they haven't quite got there, which is a lot better from our perspective as a presenter and assessor in the old system, and some of you here are presenters and assessors as well. You kind of send them off hoping that they will do their workbooks, that they will be okay, and that they'll come back, and that was a very cumbersome process. So this way, it's not dumbing down. We still have very rigorous assessment processes, and I've got to say they're probably more rigorous because now, remember, we're linking to a qualification, so we're having to actually assess them quite rigorously. But I have a much better sense that they're actually competent when you send them away, and that we can say, yep, they're going to be great out in a club, they're going to be fine. So we have a whole big list on the face-to-face course. We have a whole big list of things that they have to show competency in, and they have to show competence in each of them. So we would take it on a case.
Those competencies in the handout so that we know that what course these children or these young coaches actually done.
We can provide to you the competencies for the certificate too, if you like, and you can look them up easily yourself too. If you want to write it down, you can look it up at www.training.gov.au.
It's probably worth mentioning also on the day, if one of the opportunities that they get to prove that they're competent at an area, they don't quite make it, on that same day, that particular person's given another opportunity.
Yeah.
And sometimes another opportunity if necessary.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
but the presenter really wants to make sure they're confident because the presenter's putting their name to it. Otherwise.
Yeah, and absolutely. We've had situations where that we've gone, after the first assessment opportunity, we've gone, borderline. Let's set up another opportunity for them to show us that they're competent, or during the day, let's give them another piece of learning, let's talk to them about, you know, you're doing this really well, but there's some other areas that we really want you to try doing this more. And then we do another assessment opportunity. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. So, and then, you know, so there's, you're right, there are multiple opportunities throughout that day. We don't expect them to come in cold and have it straight away. It really, and Brooke, this, I don't know about you, but this really shows that they develop throughout the day their confidence and their abilities in actual coaching, so that they, you know, that they have every opportunity to succeed. And remember, we're judging them as competent, not brilliant, competent. So here's this is exactly the curriculum for the online. So we're looking at, you know, gymnastics in Australia. What is the NCAS stands for National Coaching Accreditation Scheme, and National Sporting Organisation. So understanding some of those terms. The role of a beginner coach. Legal responsibilities, duty of care. This is some of the stuff that used to be in the safety module, and managing risk of coaching. Drugs in sport, stages of growth and development. I know us Kinder Gym qualified people really felt like this was applicable to everybody, not just Kinder Gym, and so it's good to see it's in there. Again, this was something that the qualification requires. Even if we thought it was a good idea, qualification requires it, so we have to cover that. Athlete development, so coaching children. Children's growth and development, coaches working with participants with a low fitness level, so how you adapt your skills, how you adapt your coaching style to alter the skills and activities that you're producing. Social benefits of young people's participation in sport, the role of competition, catering for young people with varying levels of ability, so some inclusion pieces in there as well, which is also required. Unmotivated participants, how do you deal with some of those, you know, those types of kids? Coaching styles. Now this is one that comes out really clearly in the face-to-face. So we introduce it here in the online, but they actually apply this in the face-to-face course. So we talk about different coaching styles and what's right for you and what's right for the situation or the group that you've got. Okay, because that may be different. We talk about that you will have a natural coaching style, but that you need to be flexible and adaptable for a different environment or a different situation as far as your participants potentially. Stages of learning and styles of learning, how kids learn, or adults for that matter. Communication styles and feedback, so how do they get their message across, how do they give feedback. This stuff, from my perspective, is really lacking in the old course, because we taught them coaching, but we never taught them how to coach and how to communicate. And this is where I've been pleasantly surprised with the young kids in particular, that they're good at this stuff. You know, they can do it. If they've got some context and some guidance, they can do this. Group management, how to manage a group of participants. Disruptive participants, some of that behaviour management stuff that we all know happens. Working with parents, carers and officials, and teaching gymnastics elements, I think. Nope. Teaching gymnastics elements. So the 4 Fs are our fun, fitness, fundamentals and friendship. So it's at this level of coaching, we're focusing on keeping children involved in the sport, which is providing them fun and beneficial activities. Okay, we're not talking about elite gymnasts at this level. Safety in the gym, and some about planning and reviewing. Now, this is probably an important point to make, because at this level, at a beginner level, they are only reading, interpreting and running a lesson plan. They are not writing a lesson plan. Okay, so a beginner coach who finishes their face-to-face and comes out into the club, if they're not there already, is expected to be given lesson plans. They're not yet competent to be able to develop their own lesson plans. Okay, they know from their face-to-face course, and they do this in the course. They get given, these are the activities I want you to coach, and show us how you actually coach them. Okay. Now they do a small assessment piece, which is getting them to understand the structure of a lesson plan. So there's a warm-up section, and then you might have a circuit or something in there, another little activity, and then a cool-down. So they understand the structure of a lesson plan very well, but they're not expected to know all the drills, lead-up drills and activities and all that sort of stuff to be able to come up with a lesson plan at this stage. Is that clear? Yep. So that's the content of the online course. To be honest, where we really focus for the face-to-face is, let me go back, a little bit around their role, a little bit around safety. We do revisit that, and we look about hazards in the gym. So we physically go around and we look at what hazards are there and what potential hazards might be there that they need to be aware of and how they might address those. We don't cover drugs in sport in the face-to-face. We don't cover stages of growth and development, although they apply that information. So we give them a situation where they might be coaching 8-year-olds, and they have to actually take this information that they learnt online and say, okay, well, what can I expect of 8-year-olds? Do I expect them to, be able to stand in a line for 10 minutes and not get up to mischief? Or do I need to keep them active all the time? That sort of stuff. So they're applying that. Same with athlete development. Coaching styles, they're actually really developing their coaching style in that face-to-face course. And that's a big part of it. Them understanding what works for them. They coach the fellow participants who are not kids, but they give them feedback, let me tell you, of what works well, what doesn't work so well. Because what they see is that the participants, which are the pretend gymnasts, go, I didn't understand what you said, or you didn't really explain it clear enough, or, so they give each other feedback to get some of that stuff. So they're applying these stages of learning and learning styles. Communication skills is a big part of it, and they're assessed on that. They are assessed on group management as well. How do they structure the session? Do they get them standing up, okay, everybody in a row, now one person at a time? Are they going to do a circuit? Are they going to do it, a follow the leader type of activity? How are they going to manage that group? We don't cover so much of working with parents, carers and officials, and we do cover the 4 Fs in that we assess them on, when you're running an activity, how can you make sure that it is fun, that it's appropriately developing their fitness at a level that is appropriate for that child, that they're learning fundamental skills while they're doing it, and that there's a degree of friendship there. Okay, so we quiz them on that and we assess them on that. Is that the last one? Safety, as I said, we do a whole section on safety, and planning and reviewing, we do talk about the structure of the lesson plan. Not so much what content, they don't need to come up with content, but they do write a lesson plan based on some content we give them. Okay, so that's the beginner course, and as I said, after this face-to-face day, they go away as a beginner coach. Okay? As a beginner coach, they need to coach under supervision. They are not yet, this is a really critical point, they are not yet qualified or accredited to be able to coach on their own. Now you might say, well, that's a big fat hassle. Thing is, they should be under supervision already. So they're still under supervision. They can be up to 3 beginner coaches to 1 supervisor. So that's the guideline that we're sort of saying. You can have 1 supervisor supervising 3 beginner coaches. That's fine. But you would expect that supervisor is not taking a class of their own as well. Yeah, because otherwise it's very hard to supervise 3 other classes when you've got your own class. The other thing about this is that after this day, they get their tech membership for a year. Okay, so the course fees for those 2 cover their tech membership for the first year. In the past they had to do their course workbooks, and then they got a letter saying now you have to ring Gymnastics Australia and become a tech member. There's another $100 and whatever dollars. They are a tech member for their first year after they finish that face-to-face course. Okay?
Just going back to the point of supervision, as say 1 supervisor can supervise up to 3 beginner coaches, but they obviously shouldn't be coaching if they're providing supervision. That would be the same if it was just 1 beginner coach. Really, the supervisor should not be coaching, is what you're saying, but you can actually supervise 3 at the same time.
Yeah. So it allows you to put on more classes with beginner coaches, as long as you've got that 1 supervisor supervising them. Yeah.
Go together.
210.
So in order for it to be any kid to be go, it's 210. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's a lot
Yeah.
of
That's
money.
that's the amount that I want. That I would like review.
Okay, so what I would say to you is absolutely agree. I would say three points. 1, the quality of training as a club person and as a presenter who comes through, knowing that those kids are competent. So, yes, on paper it looks like a large amount of money for a 14-year-old to fork out. The other thing that I don't know if you're aware of is that in the past, a lot of coaches, trainee coaches, especially your 16-year-olds, your young ones, but a lot of them went through the course, paid their money, and never got accredited. Do you know what our conversion rate is nationally? It's something like 20%.
Yeah.
So there's a whole heap of participants who have paid their money to do a qualification and then never got their qualification at the end of it. So this is setting them up to actually hopefully get something, and I know that still makes it painful to fork out that money, but we're hoping that we'll actually get what clubs are crying out for, which is more qualified coaches and better quality coaches
But
by
then
using the system.
this beginner and this face-to-face is still not specific to their WAG or their MAG, so that's still an extra course they have to do, still an extra payment, so they're still technically not qualified where they were at level 1
So
originally.
correct. So at the beginner level is gym sport generic. So you saw by that curriculum that they're doing generic coaching skills, okay? Generic, even in the face-to-face course, it's generic stuff that all gym sports would do, okay? And we've had candidates come through who are interested in, tramp and rhythmic and kinder gym, some of the disciplines that used to say, oh, it's not relevant to us, and I haven't had any complaints so far of them going, this is not relevant to us, because it's focused on coaching skills, which is the same across every discipline, yeah? At the intermediate level is where the gym sport specific comes in. So when they enrol in an intermediate course, they will choose which gym sport they want to do that course in. Yeah.
What are the cost of those courses? Do we know yet?
Intermediate? No.
Because say if we've got a coach that's done the beginner course and wants to do the immediate course in the 1 year, that's going to cost them $300 or more just to get their qualifications. It's a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look, the other thing I can tell you is go and have a look at other sports and how much it costs to get qualified there. Also, have a look at how much it costs to get a certificate too. We're looking at thousands. So look, I know it's different, but we don't just kind of go, oh, how much do we think we can get away with charging? It is based on, sound logic, and we have looked at comparison to other sports, what the market will bear, what we think the quality of training is warrants. All those lots of
And if their registration's paid, is that paid for 12 months from when they complete that? So they're a full 12 months of registration.
Yeah. And now that registration is rolling registration, it won't be just for the calendar year, it'll be for a full
Yeah, that's
year.
what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just to add a little bit more complexity into the mix before we go on to supervisors specifically, are you aware that this structure is slightly different for each gym sport? Well, some it's not. Yep, some it's not. I'll just give you an example. Okay, so here's WAGs. Okay, WAGs is the same as the standard one. Okay? However, MAGs.
Do you have any information on what the skills of a coach should be at each level?
Yep. We have a
It's really
MAG.
hard to, I guess, because coaches at the club are asking, where do I fit in, what do I need to do to teach this type of level? It's like, well, I don't know, because I don't know what level
Yep.
equates to which.
Yep. So we have a matrix that says at each of those levels, these are the things you would typically be teaching, and these are the ones that are going to be covered in each of those courses.
So do clubs have access to that now?
Not yet, because it's not verified by the national commissions yet, but I think that's a good point. Can you write that down as well? That you can know that sort of stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. Because we haven't written all of these, by the way. We're still getting through the process of writing all of these. Let's have a look at rhythmic is the same. Okay. Tramp splits into tumbling and tramp. Got any tramp people there?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we up to? GFA. GFA only goes up to advanced. Okay. Still very important, but okay. And kinder gym has a separate intermediate and intermediate bronze. Of course. Okay.
So a beginner kinder gym coach, can they take a class?
Remember, beginner is generic, so yes, they can, but under supervision.
But you don't really usually run more than 2 classes at once.
Not usually, no. And to be honest, from my personal opinion as a coach and a person in a club, I would have them as an assistant with a qualified kiddie gym instructor. I would be way happier, and let me say they are coming out good. So the quality of training is good.
Yep.
And I might sound biased, but
Not
I've
that
seen
I
it from the old system and new system, right?
Yeah.
The second point is
Still
they
understand.
get
Yeah.
that's okay. They get their first year's tech membership included in this, right? So if you're looking at the 100 and the 110, what does it cost for a tech membership these days? 100.
180.
179 or something,
Yeah.
so they don't pay that.
Yeah.
Cheerleading, any cheerleading people, that's kind of what it looks like. Aerobics is the standard. Acro is the standard. Okay, so at an intermediate level, we're clear, okay with beginner, where they're at now. And most of you, if you've had people go through, then they will have completed that face-to-face or possibly about to do that. When they complete their face-to-face beginner training, they get a number of things sent out to them. Okay, so within a couple of weeks after they've done their training, for those who've done it so far, it's been a little bit longer, but that's okay while we're working it out. So within a couple of weeks, they will get their certificate saying, yes, you are a beginner coach. They'll get their tech membership pack with their diary and their card and all that sort of stuff. And they will also get their pre-course workbook for the intermediate level. Okay? They don't have to go and then enrol into the intermediate course to be able to get that pre-course workbook. Yeah?
Is that a knock-on effect for every level?
We're not exactly sure which of the levels will have pre-course work.
Okay.
That's still being determined, and at the moment we were only, probably should have covered this beforehand. At the moment, beginner is going live in July nationally. We've started early in Victoria. Intermediate about September nationally. Advanced about October this year. Okay. Intermediate bronze and advanced silver, we're looking like next year. Okay. Then high performance gold the year after, so that's 2015. Yeah.
So who would enrol in the advanced course if you haven't done an intermediate bronze yet?
People who have transitioned across to intermediate bronze.
Who have transitioned, who
Yep.
have been classified as
Yes.
okay.
Correct, in that
Yep.
transition
Yep.
process.
Yep.
Yep. Which might be very few for some gym
Yeah.
sports. So
Yeah.
you might only have 2 in Victoria for, I don't know, crab,
Yep.
who have been transitioned across to this level. So then we're looking at that as far as how many advanced courses we schedule and all that sort of thing to work out, well, is it worth doing 2, or do we combine with ACT and New South Wales and run one centrally or whatever?
And
Yeah.
So at the beginner course, do all participants have to identify what gym sport they want to go? Then what intermediate workbook do they get? Or is
The
that
intermediate
generic?
workbook is generic.
Okay.
Yep. This is, sorry, this is where they specify here. Okay, so the pre-course workbook, can I get you to hand those around, please? I just wanted to take you through it because this is really where your role really kicks in, okay? And it is generic to gym sports, but it's really hands-on, practical, in the workplace kind of stuff. Then they will go on to do their online training, similar to what they did for beginner, and then they'll have a face-to-face training component as well. And at the end of there, they will get their intermediate coaching qualification on the day of their face-to-face. It also, so there's no post-course work for intermediate after here as well. And then they move on to the next phases after that. Okay, So I just want to cover this before we delve into the detail, and I know you're busting into the detail of this. I just want to cover your role as a supervisor. Now that we understand the structure and the framework, what's your role in all of that sort of stuff? So overall, your role is to be a mentor for these beginner coaches, okay? Predominantly beginner coaches, but for other levels as well. A mentor, a supervisor, and an advocate for your trainee coaches. To facilitate their learning and development. So in the olden days, we had some supervisors who were very happy just to sign off books and go, yeah, whatever. Now that they're actually getting a qualification for this, we're hoping that supervisors will understand that what they're actually signing off on is more important. Well, is just as important, but hopefully, you know, that it's being taken seriously. So facilitate their learning and development. That means giving them opportunities to experience new things, to fail sometimes. Again, we need to keep them safe and need to keep their gymnasts safe, but to try new things and to learn from them. And also to contribute to assessment. So you as supervisors will have a role in the assessment of these candidates. Okay? So responsibilities, I'm just going to jump through these fairly quickly because I think I've covered most of them. Mentor your trainee coach. Provide an environment that's conducive to safe practices and continuous learning. Okay, so that means giving them an experience with different types of classes perhaps. So they get to see difficult kids, not so difficult kids, bigger kids, smaller kids, more talented kids, less talented kids. Yeah, so that their environment is such that they know that they are supported in being able to do that. Provide feedback to them on their performance. Okay, it is really important as a supervisor that you're able to give them honest and fair feedback on their performance, because again, they're not going to learn if you don't. Provide support and encouragement. Absolutely, it kind of goes without saying, but that's one of the roles, one of the responsibilities. Facilitate completion of the intermediate pre-course workbook, which is this, and I'll explain how you do that in a minute. Complete the checklist, which is in here, and again, when we come to it, I'll explain why that's important for a qualification for their certificate too. Provide information and advice on the technical aspects of gymnastics. Okay, so remember these guys haven't learnt what's the best drills to teach a handstand. They haven't learnt that stuff yet. So you can start to be introducing them and exposing them to, well, I as a coach, and I might be the supervisor, I like to teach a handstand this way, and this is the different drills and things that I set up. But, Jenny over there, she has this other ones that she likes to do. So it's teaching them that sort of content, technical stuff as well. Always supervising them. So I hope I've made that clear that they need to be supervised while they're beginner coaches. And then also fully induct them into the club. Now, this is an interesting point because most of us, and the clubs that we're at, when we get a new coach come in, even if you didn't do it when they were just unqualified, you should do it now that they're a beginner coach, take them through an induction process into the club. This is really, really important. So this should cover what is their role. Are they getting paid or they're not getting paid? What's the expectations of the club on what they do, their hours, their standard of dress, their behaviour, their, the comments they make on social media, what do they do if they've seen unsafe practices or damaged equipment or a hazard, how do they report an injury, the list goes on, yeah? Do you get the idea? So that's the sort of stuff that you should be inducting your coach into the club when they come on board. And if you haven't done it before they got their beginner qualification, then you're gonna have to do it when they do.
Okay. Does Australia have we do that? But
Yep.
Does Victoria have a standard or a guideline they want people to use, or is it just?
Yep. If you have a look in the Club 10 resources, you'll find it in there. Yep. So at Star 3 level, you have to show your induction processes, but a template kind of thing, if you don't have one, is available through the Club 10 resources, and you'd get that by contacting Christian Brunel. Yep. Okay, so just some do's and don'ts when you're supervising your beginner coaches, and you all as supervisors have covered a lot of this stuff already, so I'm not going to go over the 2-hour supervisor course that you've already done, but just to reiterate, in this context, it's really important to be impartial and fair in your assessment. Now remember, your assessment is counting towards them getting a certificate 2 in sports coaching here. So if you don't feel that they're competent, it is partly your responsibility, not completely, but partly your responsibility to highlight that to them and to help them develop. So be impartial. Don't use your necessarily your opinions cloud your feedback to them. Be impartial as far as I'm looking at them on paper. As far as an ideal coach, are they doing what I would expect them to do? And fair. Be sensitive and honest in giving your feedback, and remember to give specific examples. So something generic like, well, you kind of don't look interested. Oh no, but I am. Well, you just sort of don't look interested. You might need to say, okay, here's an example. When you were standing there, while the kids were starting their circuit, you were standing like this and yawning. Oh, they might go, I had no idea I did that. I just that's what I was doing, and I had a big night last night, so I was yawning. Okay, the way it comes across is that you're not interested, which is not what we want. Do you see what I mean? So that sort of specific feedback is really important. Take your role as a supervisor seriously, and when you have candidates or trainee coaches come through this program, that you actually are making a commitment as a club and as a supervisor to actually see them through at least their beginner qualification, if not further and beyond. And take an interest in their development. You won't necessarily like all your training coaches. You won't necessarily want to have them over for dinner on a Sunday night. But as an employer, whether you're or a colleague of theirs, to take an interest in their development makes a massive difference. Okay, don'ts, things not to do. Don't be afraid of giving honest feedback. Okay. Now we know with feedback there's a fine line. And there's a tactful way of saying things and a not very tactful way of saying things. And if you're unsure, ask somebody else. Look, I'm finding that can I just ask you a question? This, Jenny's doing such and such and such and such, and I'm just not sure how to kind of get that across to her. So, ask others. Confidentiality guidelines, privacy guidelines in mind. Get some feedback. You have to use names and stuff. Allow the trainee coaches to coach unsupervised is a big no-no, okay? So as we said, at a beginner level, they're not able to coach unsupervised. And from an insurance perspective, they're not covered. So just like currently, if you've got coaches that aren't qualified, they're not covered as far as insurance either, and you take that risk if you do that. Don't leave trainees without development opportunities during their beginner coaching time. So you could potentially have a 14-year-old who has to wait 2 years before they can do their intermediate course. Yeah, so they've done their beginner course, they're a beginner coach, and they have to wait 2 years to do their intermediate. They shouldn't be sitting there stagnating. They should be still given opportunities to develop and learn, and not be forgotten about, so that they can continue the development.
So they still must be 16.
Yeah, that's going to be my question.
Intermediate is 16, yes.
So they can
Any part of it?
No.
The face-to-face day?
Yeah, the online.
So they will get this workbook that you've got in front of you, and they will start working through that at the age of 14. Now, how long that kind of takes you to do, and how you involve that part of it in their development over that course of time is.
So we've had people come through already who are 14.
Yep.
They've got to this,
Yep.
and they'll get their workbook, and they can work through that. They might finish it in 2 months.
Yep.
They can't enrol into this until they're 16. So your role is to help keep them interested and keep them on board. Similarly, you might have somebody who's 18. They come through, they do this, they get their pre-course workbook. They might finish that in 2 weeks. They enrol in that, they do that the next day, and then they do that the next week, and it takes them a whole period. This from end to end, for a person who's over 16, could only take them a few weeks. Okay?
The other point on that, just very quickly, is that at the moment that document is as a hard copy.
Mm-hmm.
It will actually be online eventually, so it will be that. So it won't kind of get tattered and torn if they've got a look after it for 2 years. So it'll actually be available online, and they will go through it online. User supervisor will have access to it online to tick them off, sign it off.
Yep.
But at the moment, it's
Do they have to have it, do they have to lodge it before they do the online training then?
Yeah, they
Yes.
have to complete it and lodge it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From our perspective, that we will put a tick in a box on the LMS to say yes, they've lodged it, and therefore that will allow them access to actually register for the online training part of
When
it.
they're 16?
Yeah.
Assuming
Yeah.
it's 16, yes.
Yeah.
The ruling that they can't do it until they're 16.
Yep.
This whole framework is based on competency. 15-year-old proves they're competent, but you're still not prepared to provide them with the qualification. Just a quick why?
Partly experiential. When do we think that they're mature enough to, and it's generalisation, mature enough to be able to coach unsupervised, and we would say 16.
Yeah. Isn't that addressing the competency though?
Insurance-wise and legally
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
is the other thing.
Yeah.
So they're not covered.
Not to coach unsupervised.
So,
They are covered. After this, they're covered by insurance, but only if they're supervised.
Yeah, of course.
Here, they can coach on their own, no supervision. They can be the only group in the gym as far as
Yeah.
we're concerned.
Yep.
And they are covered by insurance to do that at this point. And interesting, I had one of my co-presenters is the owner of a large club, and she had some of her 14, 15-year-olds on the beginner course, and she said, no, I've only got a few here today. I've got some 16, 17-year-olds that I'm not putting on the beginner course yet, because I don't think they're ready to do it. I don't think they're mature enough to actually even do the beginner course. So they're over the age. And she's saying, from her own club's perspective and the quality of coaches and therefore the reputation of her club, I don't think they're ready to do the beginner course yet. So that's going to be partly, that's her call. Yeah. To be honest, what we're finding is that from this point onwards, we expect that people will do another level maybe every 3 years, 2 or 3 years. So, the frequency, I mean, we can get, if people want to do this quickly, they can do that in a few weeks, if the courses line up and all that sort of stuff, right? So that's plausible.
Yeah.
They could sit here for the rest of their life, and that's fine. So it's really up to them as far as how quickly they move on. Most people want to get to at least this point fairly quickly because they want to be a coach independently, yeah? But then it might be that they don't do the next level, they don't do in bronze for 5 years after that. So yes, look, there are, but this model, in some ways I like it better because you actually only pay for what you use. So you're only paying for the levels that you actually do. It's not like it's bundled into, into this massive cost of say level 2, or that people they do their course and then they don't actually finish off their requirements, and so they've lost that money anyway. So let's have a look through now at this. So the rationale for having a pre-course book is that it provides them with a number of opportunities on the job in the context in which they're going to be working for increasing their knowledge of the sport. Now remember, you can make it gym sport specific by this stage. If you want them to become a WAG coach, do this with a WAG. Okay. So let's just have a quick, is there any other questions around your responsibilities? I think we've covered that in a fair bit of detail. Let's just have a look at some of the activities, shall we? Section 1, working in a gym. These are some of the questions that they should know and they should have been informed about, and if they don't, then this is where they go and find it out. So where does the club store the OC health and safety policies? What are the coach's rights in terms of OC health and safety? What does it say in there around what they can expect? Obviously, it will say something around to be safe, to be, not unduly given stuff that they're not capable of doing, all that type of thing. What are the coach's OC health and safety responsibilities? What do they need to do as far as OC health and safety go? That would be things like not lifting things that are too heavy for them, including gymnasts, reporting hazards, a whole raft of different stuff that would be in there. Who does a coach report safety issues or work-related incidents and accidents to? There should be a structure for who they then report that stuff to. What manual handling tasks does a coach need to do to perform their role in the gym? And have you been trained in how to perform these tasks? Now, just on this point, you can see from these sorts of questions that for some clubs this is going to raise issues. I can tell you that now. Having been involved in the Club 10 program and the review and the redesign of that, I can tell you there's some clubs that you'd go in there and they'd get this and they'd go, what's OC health and safety? Let alone have a policy on it. It's true. So inherently this is going to actually challenge some clubs as well to come up with this sort of stuff, which they should have anyway, but there may be situations like that. I hope none of your gyms, but yeah. But if that prompts them to then go, you know what, we need some, then that's a good thing as well. But certainly if they don't have them, you can't fill this in, and they shouldn't be passing their beginner coach if they don't have this stuff in place. Which is all the sorts of stuff that would be expected of a Star 1 club. So we're not expecting that clubs are Star 3 equivalent or whatever in doing this. Okay, I'll just skip forward a little bit more. You can see activity 1.3, roles and responsibilities of other employees within the gym. So that's one where they have to actually, look at who else is in the gym, how do they interact with them, why would that be important, and how they're going to go about doing that. So that's like a free text kind of thing. Organisational goals and objectives also is going to be an interesting one for some clubs because they may not have this documented. So you might find that a beginner coach comes into a club, they don't have organisational goals and objectives set out, and so the beginner coach might be asking the question of the committee, well, what are your goals and objectives? And they might go, well, we don't really have any. And they're like, well, you should, because I need to do this. So keep that in mind. Club strengths and weaknesses. And this should not be taken by the club and by you guys. It should not be taken as a, right, we're going to take this and we're going to assess the club based on this. This is purely a learning exercise for them to analyse the club environment which they're working, okay? It's not going to be then fed into some system to go, oh, look at this club, it's got all these weaknesses, all right? It's purely a learning process for them. However, it's a really good
learning process
for the club too, yeah. So, as an engaged and interested supervisor, you might go through these strengths and weaknesses with your beginner coach and go, that's really interesting that you've seen that that's a strength. I've never thought of it that way. Maybe that's something we should be promoting in our marketing to people.
So on these things, is there kind of not really right or wrong answers?
No.
And there's like a certain number of boxes, but does it matter if they don't fill in all the spaces or?
No.
Okay.
No. Within reason. Like if they do one and it's really lame, you as a supervisor should go, can you think of some other more specific strengths and weaknesses? Yeah. So, no, there's not a right and wrong answer necessarily, but what we can glean from this is that the beginner coach is thinking about this sort of stuff and discussing it with you guys as a supervisor. Whether it goes upwards in the management of the club, like it would be wonderful if that sort of stuff is shared. But that may only happen when you have a group of beginner coaches go through, but even so, the club would be silly if they didn't kind of look at some of this stuff and go, that's interesting, that's what one person thinks of what our strengths and weaknesses are. Next page, personal goals and objectives. Again, certainly no right or wrong answer for these types of things. This is where you as part of the person who's developing the coach should be discussing this with them. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do with your coaching? Is it just a filling time while you're at uni thing? Is it that you want to actually, progress up to master level and become, the Australian team coach one day? Roles and responsibilities of a coach. What are your specific responsibilities? Now this will vary in each club's context. Okay, what things are they expected to do as a coach in your club? So can you see then on page, lost the page numbers, can you see S1 supervisor checklist? Working in a gym. So this is the checklist that you would complete after they've done those 6 pages or whatever of activities. So you tick if you've observed it. Have they completed all induction requirements? Can they communicate effectively and appropriately with others? Can they develop goals and plans to achieve goals? Do they complete their own work tasks on time, seeking support or offering assistance when required? Do they use business technology as required to complete work tasks? So that might be computers or whatever, fax machines or whatever. Can they communicate professionally with colleagues to ask questions, seek support and feedback, communicate progress and adjust plans? You get the idea? I'll keep going for this one. Do they develop effective working relationships? Do they deal appropriately with problems, issues and conflicts that arise while displaying respect for differences? Do they maintain high standards of personal presentation in accordance with the club requirements? And high for some clubs is different to high in other clubs, can I tell you? Do they understand the rights and responsibilities and demonstrate safe behaviour? Have they completed the workbook activities on the previous page? And then you as a supervisor would then tick that. If you've observed all of that, you would tick it. If you haven't, again, you need to go give them that feedback and give them an opportunity to learn and display those things. So for example, if I didn't tick develop effective working relationships, I've only seen them working in isolation. So I haven't seen them, working with others. I don't have a very good rapport with the people in the club or the other coaches. I need to create some opportunities for them to develop that and to demonstrate that to me. Okay, so you might need to get creative. How am I going to give them that opportunity? But remember, when we send our do's and don'ts, make it fair. You're setting them up to succeed here, not to fail. So make it fair and help them to show you that they can do all of these things. So then, once you've ticked all of those ones there, you would then sign the part down the bottom, and the beginner coach also signs it and dates it there. So then they would work on to the next section. Coaching safely. Now we know that safety is a massive thing that we want to emphasise. So the first activity looks at what documentation and processes are in the gym to ensure safety and to contribute to safe practices. So things like member protection policies, OC health and safety procedure and policy documents, emergency action, evacuation plan, heat policies, first aid procedures and injury reporting, etc, etc, etc. Okay? The next section is around hazards and risk management in the gym. The next one is a safety checklist. So they have to create a safety checklist that you could use before delivering a session. So what are the things they have to check before they then go on to deliver their session? Bless you. Safe setup of equipment. Injury prevention. What are some of the strategies that you can use to prevent injuries? And how do you report them? So they have to go and find the club's injury reporting form, and if they don't have one, there's an example of one in here. Okay? And so for that section, coaching safely, we then have another checklist that supervisor you would sit down and discuss and tick off with the beginner coach. So can they identify equipment requirements, assess and equipment issues in accordance with procedures? I have to fix the wording of that one. I think it means access, not assess. Access, moves, sets up and returns equipment correctly and safely in accordance with instructions and procedures, demonstrates safe lifting techniques, etc, etc, etc. Okay? Now the next section is around planning. I'm not going to go through each activity individually, but essentially this is starting to teach them how to do planning themselves. Because remember I said as a beginner coach, they will be given by you, by the club, the lesson plans that they're going to need to run. And to be honest, a lot of clubs have standard lesson plans anyway these days that people do, so that shouldn't be too much of an imposition. But now they're starting to think about, okay, well, how would I come up with a lesson plan myself? And what are some of the things I need to learn to be able to come up with a lesson plan? The concept of reviewing a lesson plan. Concept of self-evaluation. Now this is something that I think was really lost in the last course around, it's all very well to run a lesson, but do we take the time to go back and go, that worked really well and that didn't work well at all? Or keep in mind that this activity tends to create a bottleneck in a circuit, so if I'm going to do that I need to make sure that there's something else that takes a long time beforehand. So it's all that sort of reviewing and thinking about how your lesson plan actually worked in practice. Headset on, mindset, that's fine, but it's not restricted to that. You'll find when you look at the content it's not particularly gym sport specific anyway. Broaden their learning areas. So you're starting to broaden their areas that they're knowledgeable about into some more of the drills, and the technical specifics of how to teach some of these things. It's experiential and work-based, so it's on-the-job learning, this one, instead of in a classroom, and allows for application of theory and learning from the courses. So they've learnt all that stuff from their beginner course. How are we going to then apply it in a real-world situation? So with real kids, real parents, real gyms with equipment setups that might not be as lovely as what they saw at their face-to-face course, all of that sort of stuff. And as we said, it's pre-course rather than post-course, so that it's pre-learning, ready for the next level, and can be done any time before they do that next level. Okay. All right. So if you have a look at the first page, we've got the workbook introduction. I guess the key things that you want to have a look at here is the outcomes. So they say coach beginner or novice participants to develop fundamental motor skills, organise and complete daily work activities, etc, etc, etc. So you know which section I'm talking about there? Yeah. Now they, by the way, come straight out of for the most part, come straight out of the qualification. Okay, so they are things that the qualification, a certificate to in sports coaching, requires of people as well. As it says there, it forms part of the training and assessment for the certificate to in sports coaching. Prerequisites, I think we're okay on this now. They have a beginner coach accreditation already, and they don't even get a copy of this until they've done their beginner coach accreditation. And that they have a qualified supervisor, so that's you guys. Yeah.
Is there going to be a new supervisor course? So people who already had a supervisor qualification attended information session and transfer over. And is it going to appear on the liners?
Yes.
At the moment? Or you know when you get your certificate, does it print out?
Not on the certificate, but it is recorded on INUS.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a new supervisor.
There is going to be a new supervisor's course. Yep. Now you guys as current supervisors, there may be a little bridging bit. Yep, just a little bridging bit.
Yeah.
This is not, by the way, the new supervisor's course. What we're doing here is an information session to help you understand in this interim period what your responsibilities are, but it will go along the lines of some of this sort of stuff, yeah? Okay. So there will be a new supervisor's course for new people, new supervisors who want to come on board and do that, and I anticipate that there will be a bridging piece for existing supervisors such as yourself to cover a little bit more of that assessment side of things, which has been the biggest difference to what you're doing now.
So do you know when those courses are going to be available?
Towards the end of the year. Okay, so having a qualified supervisor at the moment means that they've done the current old supervisor's course, okay, and that they're willing to commit to actually helping them through all of this and their next level of qualification as well. We'll look at the structure of it in a minute. So following completion of all of this, which is currently a paper-based document, but as Jane said, will be online at some stage, is that they will then submit it to Gymnastics Australia for us to have a look at. And you can understand that the registered training organisation needs to see quite a lot of these checklists from their perspective to say, yes, that person is competent in each of those areas, so then we can add that to their certificate to qualification. All right. Now there is a page in there called Instructions for the Supervisor. It's about page 6. And I'll just go through that relatively quickly. So you have a duty of care to supervise them. I think we've covered that enough. a ratio of 1 to 3, so 1 supervisor to 3 beginner coaches is the maximum. You can have less. 1 to 1 is fine, 1 to 2 is fine, but maximum of 1 to 3. Yeah. Some of the activities in this book require the coach to be involved in the gym, finding out information about the gym. A lot of the same sort of stuff, to be honest, as what you would do in an induction. So you were asking before about what sort of things should we do in induction. I've got to say some of these are it. And so you may have already done it with them, which is great. You just need to refresh it and revise it with them. That's cool. And then they need the opportunity to coach and actually practice getting in there and coaching. So as far as giving them hours and choosing suitable groups for them to practice coaching, that's partly your responsibility to do. Okay, so at each of the sections, and we'll look at this in a minute, there's a checklist for you as a supervisor to tick off whether you think they're competent or have completed each of those different tasks. And as an assessor, I can tell you that the tick boxes in the lesson evaluations are fairly kind of yeah. To be honest, if a lot of supervisors don't even read what they're ticking off yes to, because sometimes the correct answer is no, and they've gone yes, and you kind of go, they didn't even read it. So, can I just stress from an assessor's point of view that these checklists in here are actually more important than that. And there's less of them, so you should be looking at doing that properly. All right. And the point that it makes here is the items on the checklist should be done to an acceptable level of the standard that's in your club. Now, that will vary from club to club, but it's up to your club to set a standard which is acceptable, so that you are comfortable that you've got somebody who's of a high quality coaching in your club. Really, if you tick them off and they're crap, it's only you've got yourself to blame for doing that. So. There is a minimum of 20 hours of coaching they need to do as part of this activity. Can you see that in the last sentence there? Alright, so now we're looking at group organisation strategies. And then activity 3.7 is organising groups for different types of activities. And this is an area where I've got to say they struggle in. So that's highlight that as an important kind of one. Spotting techniques. Now they will come across spotting techniques and see them in practice when they do their intermediate face-to-face. But this is an example of where they're starting to kind of increase their awareness around spotting and start to see how it's done in their club before they then come to the intermediate course where they will actually learn how to do it properly. Another checklist, so this is checklist number 3 for you to fill in, contributes to lesson plan development, including identifying resources required, appropriate matching of coaching methods and coaching style to suit the age, skill and developmental level of the kids that they're coaching, supervises the gymnast at all times and manages the class group behaviour appropriately. Yep. Now, can I just say, when you're ticking some of these things, if you've seen it once, and only once, would you tick that as being tick if observed? Not necessarily, although I'm not saying that's wrong. Yeah. Typically, from an assessment context, you want to see it as a consistent, repeatable thing, and that's what equals competency. We're not asking you to say if you think they're competent here. We're asking you to say if you've observed it or not. Okay. So in this context, you've observed it, so you can tick it. If it was me, I would probably want to see it a few times to know that they can actually do it. So that's the difference between ticking that they're competent, which would imply that they can do it repeatedly, at a certain level of competency, versus observed. Okay. So if it was me filling this out, I would want to see that they can do it more than just once. It wasn't a fluke, that they actually are okay at doing this. And again, if you tick it once and they've only seen it do it once and that was a fluke, then potentially, you've got a coach out there in your gym who still has issues in that area which won't be addressed or identified. They might keep going. Always having that issue. Alright, and section 4, communication. Again, building on some of the stuff that they learnt in the beginners course and that they will then expand on in their intermediate course as well. And then on page 43, you'll see there's a section on industry knowledge. This is a little bit of a project that they have to do. They have to look at an article or a publication in the area of sport, fitness and recreation industry that increases your knowledge on one of those areas. Easy at the moment, it's probably drugs and sport. You'd find an article on that in every single commodity age. But that's an example of something they could use here, okay? It's an aspect of the industry that they can report on. And they don't have to do much. They've got to find it and then they've got to talk about the key points and how this applies to them in their coaching context, which most 14-year-olds are able to do this. If they're struggling with this because of literacy issues or maturity issues, then probably tells you that you need to take a little bit longer with this pre-course stage. So on the next page you'll see S4, the supervisor checklist around communication, around those sections that they've just completed there. The next section is on skill and drill collection. So this is really where they're going through and they're taking notes in here on what are some of the skills and drills that they're seeing in their club. So it might be, and I've had trainee coaches do this before, they might come and say, what are some of the things you do to fix up a cartwheel so that they're not going around the corner in a cartwheel? You know, what are some of the drills to be able to get a cartwheel to be straight through the hips rather than, you know, bent or archy? And they can record some of these things in here. They can also, it doesn't just limit it to this, they can record them anywhere else as well. So if they want to keep a log or a journal or of different ideas that they've seen, that would be brilliant. From an assessment perspective, this would be the minimum that we would ask them to do. And then you can see in the back here is the next steps. I'll just go through those so that you're aware of them. Okay, so they have to submit this workbook to Gymnastics Australia. And as I said, that will be online at some stage, but at the moment it's posted in. They also have to complete a first aid course. Now, I didn't talk about this. In our current level 1 qualifications, we don't require everybody to have a first aid qualification, which, can I tell you, when we've spoken to other sports, they are amazed that that's not the case, because even their most basic level, they have to have a first aid qualification. So in the old levels, in the old system, it's only been a kinder gym coach who requires a first aid qualification to be able to coach. So at the intermediate level, you will need to have a first aid qualification to be able to become an intermediate coach. Okay? Okay, so then the next stage is once you turn 16 years old, or if you're already 16, you'll become eligible to enrol in the online intermediate course. Yeah. In the gym sport of your choosing. So remember, that's when the gym sport comes in, when they enrol in that online course, and they will enrol in the online intermediate course for WAG, MAG, or whatever. And just so that you know, some of the content in that is gym sport generic, and some of it is gym sport specific. Okay, so there will be a piece of that online course that is the same across all gym sports, and there will be a piece that is specific to.
So if they go through and they do the WAG and they come out as an intermediate WAG coach, if they then later on want to go through and qualify as a MAG intermediate coach, that bit they won't have to do that bit again. The system will go, oh, you've already done that, fantastic. In which case then do this.
Yeah, gone are the days of where, because it was a face-to-face course or something, we couldn't work out how to do that, but yeah, that will definitely be the case. Okay, so they'll complete that online training, and again there's assessment in that online training as well, so there's lots of questions and activities and things that they have to do as part of that, and they'll have to get those all completely correct. And then once they've done that, they can then enrol into a face-to-face training course, very similarly to how they'll do it for the beginner course as well.
And I would say, just in terms of doing the online training, in terms of the LMS, from our perspective, in terms of managing how many courses we need to run, and what the likelihood is in the next 6 months having to run a WAG intermediate course, because people at that online training point will say, I want to do a WAG course. So we're going, right, okay, I've got that many people that are in the process of going through that online WAG course, therefore we're going to need to put a face-to-face course on. It makes it much easier because we know who is in the system going through those processes, therefore we can deliver that face-to-face course in a more timely manner rather than sort of, you know, having a whole load of people phoning up going, we need a WAG course.
But also it'll change the calendar. The calendar will have to be flexible.
Yeah.
So gone are the days where we can have a calendar and sorry, you're going to have to wait until 6 months to do that. If there's a need for it, there will be a course put on. Yeah? So, and we'll be able to see, as Jane said, what the need is by that. Yeah.
Similar to the online training where you've said if you do it for MAG, you complete the generic and the specific, and then if you do WAG, you don't have to do the specific. The face-to-face, is that going to be the same mentality, or face-to-face is completely different?
That's completely sports specific.
Yeah. The only thing that we're looking at is whether we, because for example, MAG and WAG, there's a lot of crossover in the face-to-face as far as some of those skills.
Okay.
So we're looking at how...
Where it can be, so...
Yeah.
And how to record it.
Yeah, and whether you can actually... Yeah, exactly.
Look, it might be that, and it's a one-day course. One day at intermediate level. It won't be more than that.
Yeah.
So we're looking at how we can, if we schedule a MAG and a WAG on the same day, like what we do currently, I don't know, you guys have done it, I've done it, we do floor together, and vault together, and then separate for the other parts out, so, yeah. And then of course, once they've done their intermediate face-to-face, then again, they get their intermediate qualification, they can then bring that back to the club, say, I've got my intermediate qualification, fantastic, good on you, and now I can coach independently after that. Yeah.
Because there's so many levels now, is there going to be restrictions on what level groups like an intermediate coach can coach up to?
Yeah, there'll be guidelines. It's more skills-based than level-based. If that makes sense? Because, and part of that is because at some of the different gym sports, and our tramp people will be able to relate to this, from a tramp perspective, at their intermediate or intermediate bronze, they'll want to be covering somersaults, I can tell you that now. And I haven't seen those materials, but I can tell you that they'll want to do that because it's such a core part of trampolining, and that's been some of the issues that we've had in the past. So, so there will be, it's more around skills that you can coach rather than levels that you can coach. Because of course skills in the levels change too. So, any other questions about the pre-course workbook? So it's called intermediate, but it's pre-course. Yeah.
You said before the intermediate was being launched in September. Is that the online part, the whole thing, or just the face-to-face?
This is already launched.
Yeah, so the workbook's out.
The workbook. So it's
assuming
the
they
online.
finish that in 2 weeks, the online doesn't actually exist yet?
In September it will.
Okay, so that's the bit that's in September.
Yeah.
Will the supervisor's qualification be at a certain level as well, or is that a completely separate, will that be a separate course? Because at the minute it's like, if you do level 2, it's included, otherwise if you have level 1 you have to do a separate course.
Yeah, no. It'll always sit on the side of it. Oops. It'll always sit across here as a separate thing. What we haven't worked out is whether there'll be limitations. Well, I mean, at the moment you have to hold the qualification of the person you're supervising, right? So it might be as simple as that. But you won't get a supervisor's qualification, I believe, that is at a certain level. It'll be a supervisor's qualification, and it won't be bundled in with these either, the way that it is in our current level 2 courses. Yep, so then you can be advanced coach without being a supervisor. And to be honest, can I say a lot of the people who have come through level 2 who got their supervisors should not have got their supervisors because really they're not interested, they're not actively operating in that, they're high level coaches, that's what they want to do, not develop people. So, or not develop other coaches, Yep, plus all this the face-to-face, really. Yep, so, but there's no point running that until you've got enough people through that.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
I was just wondering if they could do the online bit yet, but not till September. So basically you could say you've got to September to kind of get your book done. Yeah.
So they were talking at the WAG Tech Info Day about possibly providing workplace assessment and training for supervisors. Is that something that's not going to happen? Or?
Yeah, so at the revised supervisors workshop,
Yeah.
there'll be more information and more training for you guys on how to assess in a workplace context. Is that
And
right,
so you'll
Susan?
get your workplace assessment and training certificate.
Portion of,
Mm.
yes.
Okay.
Units of, yep.
So there's 10 units of a Cert 4 in training and assessment. The presenters and assessors, when they're going through the bridging course, and in the future when we're actually running a presenters course, that course covers 4 units of the Cert 4 in training and assessment. The supervisors course will cover 1 of that, because we understand now that the supervisor workshop is 2 hours long. Well, we don't want to make the supervisors have to go through a 4-hour course or a 5-hour course to, so that's going to serve nobody any good. So there'll be 1 unit, and potentially it'll be at a similar length of time. There might be a bit of an online thing that you've got to do first, but that's the idea.
So again, similar to this, if you do the new supervisor's course, you will get that 1 unit of competency from a certificate for in training and assessment.
Potentially the intermediate courses are going to be out before the supervisor things. Can we still sign off on them as existing supervisors?
So advanced about October for your online and your face-to-face. Intermediate bronze and advanced silver next year, 2014. High performance gold is 2015. Master is an honorary title, so that's not a course that you do. That's a recognition of mastery in that gym sport. Okay, so that's awarded rather than somebody doing a course to necessarily do that. Again, with the coach transition, current level 1 coaches in all gym sports will be across at an intermediate level, level 2s in an advanced level. Some will go higher than that. I know there's discussion about some going lower, but not really. Some will go higher than that. For example, where you've got a gym sport that doesn't have a level 2 qualification, or where you have coaches who have been level 1, haven't done their level 2, probably should have, who are very experienced.
Before we do whatever the update is.
Yep. If we haven't got the update to you, it's not like we can say you
Can't
can't
do
do
it.
it. No.
Yeah.
But anyone who hasn't been a supervisor in the past can't.
No.
Yeah.
And I know in Victoria we're not running any other, as far as I know, any other supervisor courses this year. For existing ones will stay existing ones, but the new people will do the new one. People who want to become a supervisor. Yeah. So can I just reiterate some timeframes here? So beginner will be nationally available, the online and the face-to-face as of July 1st. Intermediate, the pre-course workbook is out for those who have been involved in the pilot and have already gone through their beginner stuff. The online and the face-to-face will be available in September.
I would say, Bianca, can I interrupt there?
Jump in.
The potential idea is that those intermediate gym sports that are more popular, so WAG will be one, is that if we have to roll them out sort of in a sport by sport, that the WAG one would probably become first, because we know, the number of people that we've had go through the beginner course, it's quite likely that the majority of those people want to do WAG. So hopefully it'll all be available at the same time, but if it's not, then we will look at doing it that way. So it depends on the the review process that's going on at the moment, and actually getting the everything in there and operation. Is if you have coaches who went through a level 1 course last year and have not necessarily speedily completed their workbook, those sorts of things, need to give them a bit of a shove, because there will be some endpoints put in place, some timelines which...
All right. As I said, thank you for your interest, and I really appreciate you coming on board. And it's helpful for me to also start hearing some of your questions and concerns and feedback as well. I know it's a change, it's a new process, and that invariably sometimes causes us discomfort. But bear with us. I do believe that it's going to be a better process, and because most of our clubs are crying out for better qualified coaches, I think it will help us in that regard. Keep talking and communicating either to Jane or through to Gymnastics Australia, and you can contact me at Gymnastics Australia as well. And in the meantime, good luck with your beginner coaches that are going through, and watch this space for all of
And
the
if
rest.
you say, sorry, but you've had, 9 months, a year, if you haven't done it by then, you're going to have to go back.
So in Victoria, our last level 1 course
Was November last year.
So in theory, if we give them 6 months, which is what they're supposed to take, we should be almost at those people finishing off what they've done. If we give them a year, we're looking at November this year. So kind of in theory, we could say roughly end of this year is that everybody should be finishing off their level 1s by
But
then.
they did last
They
year.
go for resubmits as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your night, everyone. Nice weekend.
Thank you.
Yep. Travel safely.